Welcome back, everyone, to the Writer's Parachute, where we are guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. Today, we have with us another special guest. We have Lori Krein. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you are. That's correct.
All right. She is with us today. We're going to talk to her about her two children's book, Learn Chess and Clean Bee, and also about her poetry book, A Reason to Be. And
Reason,
we're
reason
going
to reason to believe.
Reason to Believe. Why did I? Oh, I do have that. I'm getting Be and Believe mixed up. So, yes, A Reason to Believe. And it is a poetry book. So, we're going to come and talk to her in a minute. If you watch this show, you know we're going to start off with our topic of the week. But of course, we want to remind you to smash that like button and go ahead and subscribe here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast channel. We would love to have you join the group here at the Writer's Parachute, and you can follow us at Writer Parachute with no S on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. So let's get into the topic of the week. So if you've been watching, you know that this season we are dedicating it to reviews, or at least most of the season. Reviews are king for authors and writers. They are what get you noticed. They're what get you in the market. Even when we go out and buy things, look at reviews, the good reviews, the bad reviews, the ones in between. They help us decide what we want and what we don't want. So make sure you're focusing on reviews. I know they're a little hard, and we're going to try and guide you through some of the stumbling blocks for reviews. In week 1, we talked about the basic of reviews, about asking for reviews. In week 2, we talked about the paid reviews, about the professional reviews, the editorial reviews. This week, we're going to talk about some of the things you can do and how to use Goodreads effectively. Goodreads is a division of Amazon, but it is separate from Amazon reviews. So you can have a Goodreads account. You can go claim one as an author once your book is available on Amazon. You can just go to the author portal they have on Goodreads and claim your author account, and they will put your books on there. Once you have that, then you can simply go add books as you're publishing them. That is a good place to send people. It's a good place to build up your followers, is on the Goodreads account. But also, what I want to tell you is, to use Goodreads effectively, you need to be a good reviewer. You need to be able to review books. This will get you noticed as much as the reviews on your books. So if you find a book that you like from a fellow author, or maybe an author that you don't really know that well, but you liked it, you want to recommend it to other people, go write that review. As we've said each and every time, reviews don't have to be complicated. They can simply be, I like this book. This was a great book on this topic. This was something I would recommend to my friends. It can be that simple. It can be more in depth. The more you write reviews, the more you're going to get noticed by other authors who would like for you to review your book, their book, and they may come back and reciprocate and review and read your book. So think about how you can effectively use Goodreads. They do allow you to go in the reviews section, give a little teaser to your fans about the book, or to say more in depth about the book. They also let you do ask the author questions, things that you can either set up in advance or you can do at a specific time. These are really good things to kind of help you get into that mode, but also to be more effective at asking for reviews when it comes your turn. And as we say, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So, and don't forget, Amazon is not the only place you can leave reviews. They have a much stricter review policy than any of the other book platforms. Barnes & Noble has a little more relaxed. Some of the ebook platforms, such as Kobo, Apple Books, and even the Barnes & Noble Nook platform, have much more relaxed requirements for reviews. So it's always good to go check those out. If for some reason a review gets taken down on Amazon, always ask the reviewer to back it up on one of the other sites, whether it be Goodreads or one of the other sites that is selling your book. That way you don't totally lose the review. I often ask them if they will email me a copy so I can also add it to my website. Also, maybe put it on some promotional material. Now, if you're going to put it on promotional material, you're going to want to ask first. So those are just some tips to help you get through the review process. Of course, next week, we're going to have some more trying to guide you through this complicated, complex king of author books subject about getting reviews. So let's go ahead and get on with the show, and we're going to talk to Lori about her books. So Lori began writing at an early age. It's how she makes sense of the world. Writing gave her a place to document her thoughts and dreams and record the stories she created in her head. But it wasn't until recently that she began publishing her poetry, essays, and children's books. In addition to 4 self-published books on Amazon, she also writes for her blog, psychedeliclove.com, and on medium.com. Her essays are centered around love, relationships, psychedelics, and personal growth. Where she's not traveling the world, she lives in the Bay Area. Welcome to the Writer's Parachute, Lori. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, and I'm now bi-coastal officially, I have to say. I still have a little bit of roots in the Bay Area, but I just recently moved back home to New Jersey. And so I live near the beach in New Jersey now.
Oh, wow. So you
Yeah.
really are on both coasts. Yeah. I've done that flight a bunch of times, and it's
Yeah.
better going that way than it is coming this way.
Yes, exactly. But
Coming
thanks
this
for
way, you're
having me.
like, what happened to my day? I just lost it.
I go, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So
So before we get started, can you go ahead and hold up those 3 books? We have Learn Chess, Clean Bee, and Reason to Believe. These are Lori's books, and I've read all of them. They are very well. I love these 2 children's books, Learn Chess and Clean Bee. But her poetry book, Reason to Believe, was very heartwarming, and I felt I could be there with her. I was feeling those emotions with her, and it really kind of took me on a ride back through my memories. I could feel the different stages of your life in that poetry. So it was very well done, and I appreciate that. It's like I'm not really that good with well, I don't write poetry well. It's like my poor one poetry teacher that I had in college was just like, I'm going to give you a passing grade, but please tell me you never write this stuff again. I'm like, you got a deal.
that's hilarious.
Well, you have to know your limits.
That's right. Exactly.
It's like, I can't be good at everything, but
Right.
I did love what you did. But I want to talk to you about the first 2 books we talked about, Learn Chess and Clean Bee. So why children's books? I mean, I always ask this because it seems like the simplest genre out there, but actually it's one of the more difficult ones.
Hmm. Well, you know what? I think I didn't choose to write children's books. They chose me. And I think that happens a lot in life, just like poetry. I didn't choose to write poetry. Poetry just channels through me.
Mm-hmm.
I never taken a poetry class. I don't really know much about poetry technically. I've never studied it. These poems that I write they just flow from me, and it's more of a conversation, like you said, and the rhymes just kind of come to me. And I think part of that is because I read a lot of Dr. Seuss when I was a kid. So I believe that my early childhood love of Dr. Seuss channels when I write poetry. So why children's books? When I was raising my kids were little, and they were, just like all the other kids, they didn't want to brush their teeth. They didn't want to go to bed when it was time for bed. They didn't want to take a bath. And I tried to talk them into it or bribe them into it or try different techniques. And then I said, you know what? This is really stupid. I'm going to try some reverse psychology. So I said, okay, you know what? Don't brush your teeth. And you don't have to. It's your choice. Now, when they were old enough, like They were
Mhm.
probably pretty young though, like 3 years old. And I showed them some pictures of what your teeth would look like if you don't brush your teeth.
Mhm.
After a while, and they're all black and they start to fall out, and then you can't eat most foods because everything has to be mushy and taste disgusting. And I was like, so it's your choice. And for sure enough, they were brushing their teeth pretty soon after that. And the
Mhm.
same thing happened with the other things, taking
Well,
a shower and not going to bed. I'm like, all right, you have to stay in your room, but you don't have to go to sleep if you don't want to. You just stay up all night if you want to. And they never did, right? So after a little while, I just I went to a writing group and I started to write these little poems about my kids. Anyway, that's sort of how it all started, was through my raising my own children and seeing how they were just not interested in doing the things that they needed to do. And so that's where the books came from.
well, and I love that because I know going through my kids and my grandkids, it's like they're trying to assert their independence, and so anything you suggest, they want to do the opposite. So I find it funny the way you handle that. It's like my grandkids don't like mushrooms. And so I used to tell them if they didn't brush their teeth, that mushrooms would grow out of their teeth.
Uh,
And
and
so,
then you know what? That's funny.
well, and yeah, and if they missed a couple of days, you kind of get that fuzzy, slimy feeling that you get on the top of mushrooms. And so they believe me.
That's great.
But
You know,
you have to be creative, and what I love about children's books is your creativity is going to be different than other parents, but we all need those tools. We need those ideas because what works for one kid is not going to work for another one.
exactly. And I think that once I went through that process with my own kids and wrote the little stories and realized that this is a universal thing that all parents go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I just figured that parents could relate to it and the kids could relate to it. So
Yes.
I put those two things together, and that's how it ended up. Um, and I was going to say, can I talk about the illustrations?
Absolutely.
So I wrote these poems, and I wrote three of them, and then I have two more. Like I want to do a series of five total, but
Mm-hmm.
the first two I wrote in the year 2000,
Mm-hmm.
23 years ago. And I back then there was no internet really, and I sent the poems to some publishers, and I got letters back, rejected, 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 rejected. So then I put them on a shelf, and I was like, okay, forget it. I'm never going to publish these. And then over the years, I tried to do my own illustrations, and I'm an artist, but I'm an abstract artist.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know how to draw very well at all. And then I would try to enlist some of my artist friends to see if they were interested in doing it. And they're like, sure. And then they never would. So over the years, I tried and it didn't happen, tried, didn't happen. So then a few years ago, I have a friend who likes to draw, uh, and his name is Kyle. And I said, hey, I wrote this poem. So I gave it to him and I said, have you think of anything? So he's not a professional illustrator. He just likes to draw. And he came back with these drawings and the faces and the expressions. And we, decided to use bees as a character. And when I saw the expressions that he was able to create on the face, I was like, that's it. We have to publish this, because I found the right person who is able to interpret my poems in a way that I find just makes them come to life.
Mm-hmm.
So once that happened, he did the drawings, the sketches, but doesn't have illustrate like technical skills so much. But so I took the drawings, took pictures of them, and then I loaded them into Procreate, and then I did the rest. So I digitized them and I colored them in and did all that part. So it was a real collaboration. It was really fun.
Right. And there's a wonderful lesson in here that sometimes if the books don't go when you want, it may just not be the right time. It may be that just not all of the pieces are falling into place. That doesn't mean it's not a good book or a story or whatever. It just means it needs to rest until everything else catches up. I've written, for years, and I have so many stories that I did the same thing. I sent them out. There wasn't any, response. But I pulled them out in more recent years when kind of the technology and the convergence of self-publishing and everything has come out to make more of these stories available, and to kind of make them come to life, because I think that is a lovely and wonderful thing about children's books. You really can make it really visual in many different ways and kind of bring the whole story to life so that it really does make an impact, which is what we're trying to do with children's books. So I do love that. I love that story about trying to find an illustrator, because I know anybody that works in children's books or looking for any kind of illustrator or artwork for your book, it's always a frustration, because people want to do it, but they don't understand the work involved.
Exactly. Yes. And you have to be consistent, because when I tried to do it, my problem was I had trouble being consistent between one page and the next page and with the drawings. I just couldn't. It just didn't look like the same. It was just a mess.
Yes, well, I get the not being able to draw. It's like my drawings are so scary. My grandkids are like, please don't.
Don't write poetry and don't draw. Those are the two things.
Yes, I know my lane.
Good for you.
But it's like I'm just happy that they feel free enough to tell me what I'm not good at.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's great.
But I love these books. So I want to know what you think the readers will gain from these 3 books. So let's start with Learn Chess. What do you want people to take away from that book?
So the Learn Chess book, I would say probably two things, two main things. Mm-hmm. One is sort of the story behind the book. My daughter-in-law is from Turkey, and she came to the United States, and she went on the dating apps, and she said she really liked chess, and my son also likes chess, and so they met on this dating app to play chess, and they got together, and so that's how they met. And then 2 years later, they fell in love, and then they got married 2 years later, and mm-hmm. that's how they connected. So the first thing about the book is chess isn't just a game; it's a way to connect with other people. Mm-hmm. So you're connecting with the other player, and maybe there's other people that are watching you play or whatever, and so it's sharing an experience with someone, and who knows where that might lead, right? So it's not just about the game, but about the connection between the players. And then as far as the actual game, the book is also teaching the reader the basics about chess. And I'm hoping that when a young kid will read this book, or even a young adult, anyone that's interested in chess, it simplifies the game and it makes it more fun. And so I turned it into a poem, and then I explain like where the pieces go. And so a child will see that it's not scary, that it's like this thing that like, oh, I can do that. Now I know where the pieces go and I know how they move. Mm-hmm. So the basics of chess are explained in a very simple and easy to understand way that's really fun, especially for younger kids. Now, the funny thing is that when we did the book, we did the first half of it, which was the basics of chess, who the characters are, introducing them and how they move. And then I realized, like, what if someone wants to learn more or really take it to the next level? Now, of course, a young child might not understand, but the parent will. So I added another section to the book, which explains more about the rules. And it's more like a parent would read it if they don't know how to play chess. And if the child is like, hey, I want to play, now the parent can sort of look through that part and understand more in more depth, and then can help the child move through that so that they can maybe, get a little bit more involved.
Well,
and do it together.
It's great. And what I loved about it, it's very reminiscent of when I was in kindergarten and first and second grade, when they were teaching us all these little songs about how to do things. And it was kind of an order and to help you remember, because if you knew the song, it took you through all the steps. And that was very reminiscent for me when I was reading this. And I'm thinking, these kids could kind of say to themselves, the little poem that you created for each character and for how they move. And I thought it was truly unique way to get them across. And I know that you're going to say this has come from your years of reading Dr. Seuss, and he was very clever in teaching things that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it was funny. Just, like I said, the poetry kind of channels through me. I don't have to work very hard. It's one of those things that I kind of take for granted, where I'm like, doesn't this happen to everybody when they're writing poetry? Like it just kind of like falls into place.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, no, it doesn't. But it was like it took me like a few hours to come up with the little flow of the poetry. So anyway, yeah, so those are the two things: is to connect with the other person, the person you're playing with, and of course to learn the game in an easy and fun way.
Right.
So
Well,
now,
yeah, we
yeah, go
all
ahead.
have our really good points. You talk about the poetry and stuff like that. It's like I have the wildest imagination. It's like I think my imagination has absolutely no boundaries. And it kind of surprises me when people are surprised by that, because I just think it's
Yeah,
like, why does everybody else's brain work that
I know exactly. Right, right.
way?
Because we're only inside our own head and we can't understand like what. Yeah. So,
Right.
um,
So what
now,
about Clean Bee? I love this one. It was a very kind of cute little, we talked about the teeth cleaning, but this is about being clean. So what do you want the kids to get from this, and what do you think the parents will take away?
so the story is basically the bee character doesn't pretends to take a shower. He doesn't want to take a shower, so he pretends to take a shower, washes his face, and doesn't wash anything else. And he does this for a few days, and he starts to smell, and his friends don't want to hang out with him. And he doesn't smell it himself, because usually we can't smell our own stink, right? But his friends don't say to him what's going on, but his little sister does. And she's like, you smell like a pig. And so then he realizes that he smells. And then he's like, oh, that's why my friends don't want to hang out with me. So then he finally decides to take a shower. And after that, he's like, okay, yay, I'm good. So I think what I want to take away from that is, I think kids will relate to it, because a lot of children don't really like to take a shower or even a bath. I mean, when they're little, they usually do. It's fun and they play and this and that. But when they get a little older, they have that whole like, I want to do my own thing, and I don't want to. They say no to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that kids will relate to it in that way, and that maybe they'll get the lesson without actually having to do it. Like,
Right.
they won't have to go through the process of actually not taking a shower. And I think parents will enjoy it, because they will see that their kids getting the lesson, and maybe they won't fight with them so much about doing it. And mostly, I wanted it to be like playful. And again, the bee characters, like the way that they were drawn by Kyle, the illustrator, they're just so fun and playful and animated, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
can almost see them be alive.
Right.
And so I want children to be excited about that, and the ones who are trying to learn how to read, that it might get them excited about reading as well.
Right. And I'm going to add one thing. I think the conversation behind this book is really important, because as parents, sometimes we forget what we know that our child doesn't know. And so maybe it brings forward the conversation, because the transition is from when they're little and we're there with them and they don't feel alone, to where they start doing these things on their own. It's generally when you have that problem, but we forget to have that conversation of why we do this. We do this so we don't smell. You don't want to be around somebody that smells. You don't want to be around the garbage can that smells. And we forget as adults. We know why we do it, but a child is just learning. So I thought that was a great lesson in it too, is to remind the parents that they need to have that conversation.
Yeah, yeah, good. Thank you. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Well, it's I try to look at things from a different perspective, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about your poetry book. It's Reason to Believe, not A Reason. It's Reason to Believe.
Yes, reason to believe. And so this book was written, I started writing the poetry again in the early 2000s. I joined a poetry group at the library, and we met once a month for about 2 or 3 years. And so every month, and my kids were very little at the time, so I didn't really have that much of my own time. So this was a very special night that I got to go to the library once a month and write poetry with my friends. And so every month I wrote a poem, and over the course of those couple of years, I had a stack of poems, and I put them together and made this book. Now, at the time, I was going through that. I was having a very difficult time in my life. My kids were little. We had moved to California from the East Coast. I didn't know very many people, and my husband was working a lot. You know, thank God. I mean, he had a good job, and I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like he was, you know, off doing his job and taking care of the family. And so I had a little bit of like postpartum depression, and I just went through a really difficult few years. And the poetry helped me to get those kind of feelings on paper and get it out of my head, and sort of sort through it and understand it a little bit better and get a perspective on that, like that bout of depression. And you know, my mental health was kind of like fluctuating. And but I also, you know, I didn't write all these poems aren't all like doom and gloom. What they're about is having emotions. And again, at the time I was like, oh, I'm feeling bad. Why am I feeling bad? I have a great life. I shouldn't be feeling bad. And that's where the suffering comes in, is when you beat yourself up for having a bad day or feeling sad, when you're like, I don't have anything really to feel sad about. But in fact, we are humans. And no matter what's going on in our life situation, we could, you know, have the best life, but we still have bad days. And that's totally okay. And it just took me a while. Did some spiritual work, and that's where the psychedelics came in later on, of like finally accepting the fact that even though I have a great life and I have my health and my kids and my family and my friends, etc., I'm still going to have bad days because stuff happens. And to accept that and allow the feelings to exist, and to surrender to them, and to have my you know moment of crying and going into my room and curling up in a ball and like just sobbing, or whatever I need to do, writing it down on my journal, and just accepting that. And we're human, we have ups and we have downs. And so a lot of the poetry is about that, the ups and the downs, and like accepting the fact that that's how life is, and not beating myself up about it. And so that was a lot of it. And then some of them are about being a mother and feeling insecure about being a mother, and like, I don't know what I'm doing, and these are two human beings that I am responsible for raising, and I don't have a rule book. Like, how do I do this? And there, you know, I made so many mistakes along the way. And again, it's not about, you know, everybody makes mistakes, and it's not about, it's about like being okay with that, and surrendering to it and accepting the fact instead of beating yourself up, which is, so I learned that a little bit later on. I wrote also about love in there, and, you know, having like a first love and what that feels like. And I wrote about death. I've wrote a few poems about death. And so my mother died when I was 20 years old, and she was 44, and she died of cancer. And it was very, you know, obviously very difficult. And but it also gave me a different perspective about death. It kind of helped me in some way accept it, or to have a more appreciation for life, right? Because you never know, you know, when it's going to happen. So I started to realize, like, I better really embrace every day, because I don't know how long I'm going to be here. But I decided to write a couple of poems about death, but in a way of like, the person that dies, we don't know what happens after we die, of course, but they're gone and they're off to their next thing, whatever that is. I have certain beliefs about what that is. But the ones that are left behind, like, we're the ones that are feeling the pain. You know, they're not. They're probably off in something beautiful, but again, who knows? But we're the ones that are left behind and feel the pain. So I wrote more about that, and tried to again be accepting of those feelings.
Right. And which, reminded me so much of some of the 3 points that I talk about where authors sabotage themselves. We're comparing ourselves, which makes us feel bad. We're
Exactly.
comparing our journey, our knowledge, our experience to someone else that maybe that we view as doing it better. But I got to tell you, everybody does it in their own unique way. And I find that more fascinating. And the second one is accepting that we don't learn anything from perfection. We learn it from mistakes.
Yes.
And the third one is life is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yes.
If we knew all the answers now, then what would we do after?
Exactly. Right.
And so I mean, and I love the fact that you feed on those things that were just when I was reading this, that I was going, wow, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's just stated in a different way. But I did love all three of these books. I just read them and like just straight through, and then I went back and read them again.
Well,
So
thank you. I try to, the poetry isn't like normal poetry, I think that most people expect. It's very straightforward, it's very conversational.
mhm.
And I like to describe it as Dr. Phil meets Dr. Seuss.
There you go.
Because it's
Well,
like, yeah,
and it should be like that. It's like if you're speaking to children or to young adults, then it should be straightforward, conversational. It shouldn't be complicated. I think sometimes we overcomplicate things just to hear ourselves be smart.
right. Exactly. Keep it
So yeah,
simple.
I do appreciate just kind of straightforward. So what age group would you say these children's books are for?
I would say probably between 3 and 8 years old.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking just pre-K to second grade here, and I would agree with that. So I'm going to ask you now, if you could go all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to 2000 when you were starting working on these books, what do you wish you had known then, or that somebody had told you was going to happen?
Um, I wish, well, back then, that I would have continued to push them out to get them out into the world
Mhm,
somehow, because and again, just like you said before, everything happens in the time it's supposed to happen.
mhm,
Uh, but at the time, I was so insecure about my writing and I was like, well, I'm not really a writer. I'm just somebody who wrote some poems,
mhm,
and I'm not an author. You know what I mean? I didn't identify with being a writer, so I just figured, because I sent it to these 10 publishers, and they all wrote back and said no, that whatever fantasy I had about being a writer and publishing, some poetry books is like just ridiculous. Like
mhm,
so I just was down on myself about that. And if I had to do it over, I would have just continued on to try to find a way to get this out into the world, because I believe uh, that would have then I would have continued to write more and more, and then I might have had a more, I don't know, I would have had 20 books published by now instead of 4.
mhm. Well,
Yeah.
and that's a great point. And for me, I wasn't so much worried about getting them out into the world. Oh, that although that would have been great and amazing for me, to again claim those titles. And I just tell people, claim those titles now. They're a great freedom. We're all writers, and quite frankly, if you've written a grocery list and handed it somebody, you're a published author.
And I was going to say also, yeah, that's very true, right? I was also going to say that um, over the years, I've learned what helps me be successful in anything. And
Mhm,
so I think what my message to other people out there is, know what helps you be successful. So in other words, if having a schedule on your calendar
mhm,
for every morning from 9 to 9:30, I'm going to write whatever, then do that. If you know that having something on your calendar will help you. For me, it's having a community around me.
mhm,
It can, even if it's just one other person, if I'm accountable to a group or to one other person, and we're accountable to each other,
mhm.
that really helps me to be motivated to keep going and push forward.
Right, which I personally host 2 writing groups a week online on Zoom, through Shut Up and Write. It's an organization out of San Francisco, but they do have these Shut Up and Write meetings around the world.
Yeah.
A lot of them are online, some of them are in person, some of them are kind of a hybrid of both, but they're open to any kind of writers. In fact, I get some writers that say they're working on the nonfiction book called Resume, which is fine. But I like them because the camaraderie, the community, even if you guys are working on 20, 30 different things, it motivates you, it gives you that energy and that accountability to come back. And I always say that writing should be something that you block out on your calendar like an appointment,
Yes, yes,
because
agreed.
otherwise everything else, your life, is going to seep into it.
Yep.
So, and I usually try to block those out, and I really try hard to protect them. It's like, no, I don't schedule doctor's appointments or dentist appointments during those times unless I have absolutely no other choice. I don't go have coffee with friends or something during that time. I really try to protect that time for my writing, because there's so many other things I need to do that if I don't, then I don't get my writing done. And that
Exactly.
kind of makes me sad because I need to get those words out of me. Um, so I want to know what you think readers will think of your book, and you can pick whichever one you want to talk about in 10 to 20 years from now.
Well, I think the children's books, especially, the topics are timeless.
Mm-hmm.
So in 10 or 20 years from now, I think they're going to be just as relevant. Chess has been around for, I don't know how long, hundreds of years, thousands of years.
I think it's probably thousands. I believe the
Yeah,
Greeks played it, but I don't quote me on that. But I think it's
yeah,
been around for a very, very long time.
exactly. So I think in that respect, it's still going to be relevant. I'm putting a light here.
Yeah.
It got a little dark. It's 7, 8 o'clock here in New Jersey. So anyway, and I think also the poetry book is timeless. Again, people always are going to have emotions. They're always going to be in and out of love. They're always going to feel the ups and downs of being a human. And also the clean bee one too. It's kids are kids, you know.
That's true.
They're always
until
going to be
until they discover some magical way you could just point something at them and it showers them for you. I think we're gonna have
right.
this
Yeah,
conversation.
think they had that on the Jetsons.
Yes, exactly. I keep waiting for this Star Trek thing where I can just beam myself around.
Right.
That would be nice. It would save a lot of time and frustration in driving around. I mean,
Oh, I
I mean,
know.
you spent time in California. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm
Uh-huh.
sure New Jersey isn't much of a difference.
That's right.
So, I want to know, do you have any advice for other authors and writers that want to start new projects, want to write children's books, poetry, any of it?
Um, I think going back to what I said earlier about knowing what helps you be successful and doing those things. And it's really understanding yourself and prioritizing. If this is something that is important to you, then it has to be a priority and it has to come before all the other stuff. Now, I'm one of those people that has like 20, 30 ideas at all times. and and I read a book once called The Renaissance Soul. And I can't remember the subtitle, but it's basically for people who have too many ideas to pick just one or something. Anyway, that book taught me that it's okay to have 20 ideas, have at the same time, write them all down and pick 3 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is struggling with prioritizing their writing in front of all the other things that we have to do in our lives, then wait until you can prioritize it and make it in that top 3. So maybe right now you're raising kids and you're working and you're trying to stay healthy. Those are 3. That's it. Like you probably don't have much more time
Mm-hmm.
for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But if writing is that fourth thing, as soon as your kids are old enough and you have a few minutes,
Mm-hmm.
you can add a half an hour in your day, and it's on top of that priority list.
Mm-hmm.
Then you focus on that, and so it's a matter of really just deciding that this is what I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and trying it out. Like, okay, I'm going to commit the next 30 days to writing. And at the end of the 30 days, I'm going to ask myself, was that satisfying to me? Do I want to continue doing it or not? But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't give yourself that committed time frame to try it out and see whether or not it's something you really want to do, then you'll just have it floating around in your head and you'll be mad at yourself because, like, I want to write this book and I never do it. So I would say give it a try for like a 30-day period. And then
Mm-hmm.
at the end of that time, you're going to know whether or not you want to keep going, and you're going to be really excited about it. And you're like, I'm going to do another 30 days. But I would say, don't try to commit like, okay, I'm going to spend the next year writing this book or whatever. Take it in short, small bites, because that's way more manageable. And you'll get you'll find out a lot sooner whether or not this is something that you want to continue.
Right. And I was just going to add to that. I mean, you were talking about the three things that was keeping them from writing. They're raising a child. They're trying to, you said they were trying to get healthy. And what was the third thing?
Well, if they're working, if they have a full-time
Well,
job.
but again, you just gave them three topics to write about. I mean, if you're already doing that, how hard would it be to write about it?
That's
To
very
talk
true.
about it? And
Good point.
and I always say we carry around these amazing devices in our hands that we can talk to, that we can write on, and I love using voice to text and recording for my ideas. You can always refine it later, but at
Yep,
least you got the idea down. I mean, that's half of the battle, is just getting started and
that's
getting the concept or the idea down. And then, it's like making a cake. The cake's big. Now you just got to figure out what kind of icing you want to put on it.
exactly.
so, so I love that. So we want to know what kind of obstacles or challenges that you ran into when you were writing or publishing your book.
So writing the books, I didn't really have many obstacles because they just kind of flowed out of me. So that wasn't the hard part. Um, the hard part for me was the publishing part was a little rough because I decided to self-publish, um, and that but so the self-publishing, the learning curve was pretty steep at
Mm-hmm.
first because I went through Amazon KDP,
Right.
and I had to, but so I was like, oh, I don't know how am I going to do this? Like, I don't know how to do this. Well, when I went on to KDP, I realized that they have all these amazing step by step, very specific videos
Mm-hmm.
and instructions
Yes.
that I just was like, oh, okay, well, I can watch videos, and I watched, and it was actually not that hard to follow those instructions. And before I knew it, I had the book ready to be published. And
Exactly.
yeah, so the obstacle wasn't an obstacle after all.
Right.
Um, and so then the second part was figuring out the cover for the books. Well,
Mm-hmm.
especially the poetry book, but I'm also an artist, and also so the cover is a piece of artwork that I had done.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see there, but
Mm-hmm.
this girl on the beach. And then on the inside of the book, to make it more interesting, I decided to put my artwork inside the book too. So next to every poem, there is a piece of my art, and that was really hard at first
Mm-hmm.
because you're putting yourself out there. My artwork is very personal. It's an
Mm-hmm.
expression of myself. I'm not trying to be like paint the beautiful, scene. My I do expressive art.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a moment of kind of like, all right, I'm putting myself out there. Anyway, so that was a big decision to put my own artwork on the cover. And once I did that, though, it was like, okay, got it done. Like,
Well, and we were talking in the green room that you were still it was one of your challenges and you were still struggling with it, was also the marketing, which is very common. We see this a lot with new authors or with authors that aren't getting the coaching or the guidance through it. So can you talk a little bit about what you've tried and how that's worked for you, or are you kind of stuck and not able to even launch?
So one of the first things I did was, once I figured out how to publish the books on KDP, then I had to get my the codes that you put on the back of the book, the ISBN number.
ISBN numbers, yes.
Yeah, so I went on to Bowker, I think it's called Boker,
Bowker.
and Bowker. So I bought 10 ISBN numbers. That was another
Mm-hmm.
another kind of hurdle to figure
Mm-hmm.
out. Anyway, and so then it was like, okay, now they're all there. They're all on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Right.
So the first right. So how do I tell people about it? And the first thing I did, kind of like a no-brainer, is to post them on my social media. So I did that. I put them on Facebook. I emailed my email list. I put them on Instagram. And I told my friends, like, please spread the word. And so I sold, a handful
Mm-hmm.
of copies. And then, like, crickets.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I know that one of the things I need to do moving forward is to, like, figure out what to do next with the marketing, because I haven't done anything
Mm-hmm.
since then. And I still sell a book here and there, but I don't know how to get it beyond my social circle. And
Right. Yeah.
that's the big challenge.
Right. And so, there's generally three thoughts on that. So you can either build yourself a bigger platform. You can borrow somebody else's platform that they already have, which means go to somebody who has a bigger following or bigger group or something like that, or to a place that has a bigger audience. Or you can what they call buy a platform, although I don't know that it always means actually buy, but it means, to do paid ads, or to go like you're doing now on a podcast channel, or go on TV, or on newspaper and radio stations. But what I try to tell people, the reason that marketing is difficult is because most people go into it without any idea of what they want the result to be. Yes, you can get, a podcast interview, a television interview, and, an article written in the newspaper or magazine. You can go on social media. You can do all of these things. But if you don't know what you want as the result, then your message may not resonate. So if you just go, hey, here's my book, go buy it, and they're like, okay. But if you said, you know what? I wrote this children's books about clean bee because my child would not take a shower. So this is a lesson about a bee learning what happens when they refuse to take a shower. Then you hear all these parents going, my kid needs to read that. I should probably go buy that.
Right.
Because again, what you want is you want to connect with your audience, and you want them to buy your book and read the story and get that message. So again, the two things, the one is just scattershot, here's my book, do something with it. The other one is directional. It's saying, my book, it's out, it's about this, here's where you can go get it.
That's
And
great.
it,
Yeah.
it doesn't, it really isn't any more information. It's just sort of the order, and you have an actual concept. Now you would do it a little bit differently if you're saying, hey, my book is coming out in 3 weeks. I'm looking for early reviews. If you would like an advanced copy, contact me and I will send it to you. That's something
Yeah.
different, because your result is to get reviews before the book comes out. So again, you have to think about what it is you want. When you're on social media, do you want them to, it's like, my book is out, can you please share it on your page? Can you please share it in one of your groups? Can you go put it up as uh your icon for 2 days or something like that? Again, you have to know what it is you're trying to get.
Yeah.
Or, what? I released my book a month ago. If you know any podcasts that are looking for guests for children's books, please refer me there.
I
So
love it. Those are
yeah,
great ideas.
yeah. So you have to just think about what it is that you want and sort of work backwards from there and make sure that your messaging is pointing where you want to go. Because if it's
Great.
pointing in 14 directions, then your audience is confused as to what you want them to do.
Absolutely.
so, so that's what I would say. So I want to know what keeps you motivated when times get hard.
Um, so every once in a while, uh, I will get a review or a note or an email or something from one of the few people that have bought the book. And they're like, I just read this to my kid and they can't stop. Like they want me to read it every single night. So
Mm-hmm.
anytime I get any kind of feedback from a customer, someone who bought one of my books, I'm just charged up, right? Because that's what you like. That's what it's about is connecting to my audience. And so when I get feedback, like just like when you were saying you read my poetry book and you connected with it, and that just like, oh, I'm so excited. That gets me so motivated. Like I want more people to read this so that they can connect and they can see, in this case, maybe they won't feel so alone if they're feeling a little bit confused or sad or
Mm-hmm.
ups and downs. Like
And what are
that.
those things? What do those two things have in common? They're reviews. So, what should you do with the
Yes,
review?
yes, yes, you
Share
should
it.
share
So,
it.
people, because my recommendation of the book and somebody else's recommendation of book might get you a new buyer.
That's right. Yes, good
So,
good point. Yes, reviews, 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 very
yeah,
important.
share those reviews and share those moments. I'm so elated. I just got this note from one of my readers.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about connecting, and I mean that's as much about marketing is telling a story,
Hmm.
and but it's telling it in little tiny steps.
Right.
You don't tell the whole story each time, you just tell them a little bit more. It's almost like this perpetual teaser.
Yeah, it's a good point.
All right, well, I am glad that that works out for you. So I want you to write your own book review.
Okay, I'll give it a try.
Okay.
All right. And it's actually funny because it's kind of similar to what you said
Mm-hmm.
already. I chose Clean Bee to
Mm-hmm.
write a little book review about Clean Bee. So I did this as my homework because I had a little time to prep. So this book is about a bee who learns the consequences of not taking a shower for a few days. For example, one of the consequences is his friends start to avoid him because he smells. And he decides that taking a shower is worth it, so his friends won't avoid him anymore. And they come around and they are now friends again. So,
That's an amazing review, and the point of the reason that I am asking my guests this season to do this is because we want them to see, but we also want you as the audience to see how easy reviews are, how simple they can be, and how quickly you can write a review. I'm sure you didn't spend more than just a few minutes just jotting that down, and it's so helpful to authors and to ourselves to think about what's good about our book. Because the next time you're in an elevator and you happen to run into the best promoter of children's books, you've already got that review in your head to tell them,
right.
between this floor and the next two up when they get off.
Exactly. Pull it out of your pocket.
There you go. You've got it ready to go. And as I said earlier when we were talking about the topic of the week, authors writing reviews help them get reviews.
Right.
Because if you're reading and you're writing about other books and recommending, then those readers are going to come to you on a regular basis looking for other books. And then I happen to see your book and they're like, oh, I should go check that one out. They've given me some really good suggestions. So all of these things help you. So what is next on your agenda?
Well, I started working on the next bee book, and it's called Good Night Bee,
Ah,
and it's about 75% done. So
Mhm.
the illustrations are almost all finished and the story is all finished. So I just have a few finishing touches to put on them. And this book is about, as you probably can guess, this time the bee does not want to go to bed. Um, but instead of arguing with his parents, he pretends to go to sleep, and his parents go off into their own room. And then he sits back up in bed and he thinks about, ooh, now what am I going to do now that I'm not going to sleep? I'm going to stay awake and I'm going to play with my, should I play with my toys, or should I read, or should I sing, or what should I do? And then he goes through and has this whole like dreamy experience in his imagination about floating up into the sky and being in the clouds. And then he gets a little nervous because he's floating and he's like, I want to go back home. I'm too far away from home. And then he closes his eyes and he kind of like counts to three, and then he's back in his bed, and he's so relieved to be home again. So that's
There you
kind of like a little summary of the story. There's a teaser for you.
There you go. Well, we always love those teasers, and we want you to go check out all of Lori's books. Don't forget Learn Chess, Clean Bee. Those are children's books, and Reason to Believe, which is her poetry book. And I believe you also have a fourth book that we didn't cover. Did you want to talk about that for a moment?
Sure. I'll just hold that one up. It's called Meditation in Manhattan: Finding Calm in a Chaotic World. And I wrote that book. I think that was the first one that I published. And I started doing meditation probably about 10 years ago, but I was not very good at sitting in a quiet room, just with my thoughts. It was too much. So I decided to start meditating outside in nature and pay attention to like staring at a tree or staring at the clouds, or listening to the sounds of of nature, or even in a city, listening to sound, or so using my senses basically
Mm-hmm.
for my meditation instead of quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And through doing that, I came up with like 10 different sort of meditations, and I wrote a little instruction on how to do it. And then I wrote a little poem to go with it. And again, added some artwork. So that's what that book is: Meditation in Manhattan.
All right. Well, we're very happy that you have all these books. So, where can our listeners find your books?
So if you go onto Amazon and you just type my name, Lori Krein, it's LORIKREIN, you'll see all the books there. So you can go right to Amazon or go onto my website, which is lorikrein.com. And I also have Instagram, which is Lori Krein Studios.
Okay. Are you on any of the other social medias?
Well, those are Instagram is my primary one. I have a slight presence on Facebook, but I would say Instagram is the best bet. And I'm not on TikTok at this point.
Okay, great. So, just a reminder to the audience, we will have all of these links for you in the show notes. So, you don't need to scramble to write those down or try and remember them. We will have them for you. We'll have links directly to each one of her books, to her website, and to her Instagram. And we'll probably add that Facebook one in there anyway, just in case. So, is there any upcoming events or anything else that you would like to talk about that's on your website, newsletters, giveaways, anything of that nature?
Not at this point. I No, not really. I just moved
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks ago across the country. So right now I'm just getting settled in, but there's more to come. There's more to come.
All right. Well, we'll just say keep checking back with Lori. I'm sure she's going to add many more things. So, was there anything else that you wanted to include, wanted to say, wanted to offer before we go to our tip of the week?
I just want to say thank you for having me. And if you do go onto my website, there's a place for you to fill out a form to reach out to me. And so that would be a great way to stay connected. And when I start doing a newsletter, hopefully this summer, then you'll be on the list for that. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with people.
Oh, awesome. I do too. It's so fun to get letters, and it's like a reaffirmation of what you're doing when you get those notes and letters from your fans. I absolutely love it. Well, we're going to hop over and talk about the tip of the week. Again, we talked with Lori about a couple of her problems, but mostly the main thing is one that I see often, and I don't want anybody to beat themselves up about it because it is a very complicated, complex matter. And we're talking about marketing. Marketing has so many different facets. Do you want to sell more books? Do you want a bigger audience? In other words, do you want more followers? Do you want more fans? Do you want to be seen more on social media? What do you mean about social media? Do you want to be on a certain platform? Do you want to be on podcasts? Do you want to be on local television, on national television, regional television? Same thing with radios, newspapers, magazines. Do you want to be in a newspaper or magazines about specific genres or topics, or do you want something more in general? Do you want to make it to the New York Times bestseller list, or would you just be happy in a local bestsellers list or belonging to some organization that promotes it? So there's a lot of things here, and as we talked about in the show with Lori, it's the end in mind. Are you wanting more people to subscribe to your newsletter? Are you wanting people to write reviews for this book or your next book? Are you wanting to promote other authors in the same genre or make recommendations? Do you want somebody to help you promote your new book? Or do you want to build that bigger platform or borrow a bigger platform or buy a bigger platform to get your book to a wider audience? You have to understand what it is, and you also have to understand it works sort of like a ladder. When you're going on these podcasts and stuff like that, you may not get the exact results immediately, but it may get you to that next bigger podcast that will get you a wider audience, and then up to the next bigger podcast, which will get you more sales or get you more reviews. So you do have to think of it as a ladder or as in layers. And again, always focus on what you want first, because if you don't know what you want, then you can't ask for it. And on that thing, I'm just going to say this. I say it all the time. We already expect no, so don't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
So there's no fear in asking if you're already expecting no. So that's our show for this week. We thank you so much for being here on the Writer's Parachute, Lori. We hope that you come back, and when your next book is out, let us know and we'll try to schedule you in. We appreciate you being here on the Writer's Parachute. As always, I am so grateful to be the host here on the Writer's Parachute, guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. We hope that you find this space a creative space for you in landing your dreams. Until next time, bye.
Bye. Thank you.